Hi there, it's Llarold, and today we have a spec preview for Arms Warriors. Now, it's funny how this always seems to work out like this, but after we finished up the Windwalker spec preview, we weren't really sure what to do next. I went to bed hoping Blizzard would make interesting changes to a spec I enjoy playing, and when I checked while ahead the next day, boom! Awesome Arms Warrior buffs. I couldn't be happier, so let's dive in. Arms Warriors have undergone a major redesign in BFA. They were one of the first classes to be redesigned very early on in the alpha, and the community's response to the new arms has been pretty positive. Up until the recent Fury changes, I found myself preferring arms on the beta, and for the most part the arms redesign seems to have captured the best parts of Legion arms and dropped the worst parts. Let's start by quickly going over what's being changed and removed. First off, this week's big change from Blizzard is basically increased rage generation and tactician proc chance, both of which are great buffs. There's also some reconfiguring to the talent tree, and Overpower has a new animation. It's basically just the same animation as Execute, it's fine. Moving on to the arms changes in general, arms just like everybody else will lose their legendaries and artifacts, but Warbreaker will live on as a talent. Battlecry is no longer an arms cooldown, which is fine. It really makes more sense as a Fury cooldown anyways. Cleave's also no longer part of the base class, and it's now a talent that works a little differently. Finally, as far as the things that have been removed, and this is a good transition into the things that have just changed, the Arms Mastery is brand new. Now, when you hit an enemy with Mortal Strike, Bladestorm, or Execute, you apply deep wounds to them, causing them to bleed for 3 seconds. Arms Mastery increases the damage of deep wounds, and it's very strong. It sounds a little simple, but simple is fine if it's tuned right. Mortal Strike's cost is up from 20 rage to 30, and Mortal Strike's cooldown no longer gets reset by Tactician procs. Overpower is now a baseline skill, and it replaces Colossus Smash as the important rotational buff ability. It increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike, and it stacks up to 2 times, and Tactician gives Spending Rage a chance to reset Overpower's cooldown. Colossus Smash is replacing Battlecry as Arms Warrior's offensive cooldown. It has a 45-second cooldown, deals a decent chunk of damage, and it causes you to deal 30% more damage to the target for the next 10 seconds. Up last, Execute's had its base rage cost increased from 10 rage to 20 rage, but overall it still works more or less the same, and it does a lot of damage. Now on to what's new. Sweeping Strikes is back as a baseline ability for Arms Warriors, and it's pretty solid. It is on the GCD, which is a bummer, but it makes your single target abilities hit a second target for the next 10 seconds on a 25-second cooldown. Arms Warriors will be very good at dealing cleave damage. Arms Warriors also have a new passive, Seasoned Soldier. What are Warriors seasoned with? Rage, probably. This adds a little extra value onto crit for arms. Will it make crit their best stat? That seems doubtful, but will it make it good? I don't actually know that either. We'll have to wait for the Simcraft module to get finished to know for sure, but it'll at least make it better. All 3 warrior specs have also been given back Battle Shout. It's a raid-wide 10% attack power buff. It's good. That covers the base class stuff. Let's jump into talents. The talent tree is very different, so rather than point out what's gone, let's just dive directly in and break it down tier by tier. War Machine is a 10% increase to rage generation that also provides rage and move speed when you kill enemies. The move speed's not that strong, but this might be a good talent in widespread AoE and world content. Against the single target raid boss, it seems kind of underwhelming. Sudden Death is the Legion legendary Ayala's Stoneheart, just converted into talent form. There's absolutely nothing new about it, but that's okay, it's great how it is. Finally, Skull Splitter is a new rage generator ability for arms. It was just nerfed from 30 rage down to 20 rage. As far as I know, the warrior community didn't really care for Skull Splitter before the nerf, so with the baseline rage generation going up, and it being nerfed to compensate, it kinda just seems like Blizzard nerfed this talent into uselessness. I suppose we'll have to see. The second tier is very similar to Live. Double Time's an awesome mobility skill, and should be the go-to talent nearly all of the time. Impending Victory is a pretty weak lame heal on a fairly long cooldown, and Stormbolt's a ranged single target stun. Other classes can CC better than Arms Warriors, but it is there if you need it. The third tier is basically a choice on how you want to spend your rage. Fervor of Battle has been redesigned from Legion and works much better overall. It's a direct buff to your whirlwind damage and still replaces slam and single target. It's very good. Massacre increases your execute window from 20% up to 35%. It's extremely simple, but it's also very good. The choice between these two talents will basically just be a matter of how long enemies are alive. Fervor of Battle really won't do anything once enemies are in the execute range, since you'll be trying to dump all of your rage into execute Mortal Strike. And Massacre doesn't really do anything until mobs are in the execute range. This is a math problem. Which is bigger, X plus Y or X times Y? I don't know what X and Y are, so I don't know. Once we know more about how much damage warriors will be dealing and what the encounters will look like, we'll be able to know what's best. Rend is kind of the odd man out in this tier. It costs a ton of rage and it doesn't do enough damage. The fourth tier is just like Live. Second Wind's a decent survival talent when leveling and questing, Bounding Stride's great for mobility, and Defensive Stance is a great defensive talent for hard-hitting group content. Tier 5 is a choice between a Cleave talent and 2 AoE talents. Collateral Damage refunds a little rage when using sweeping strikes against 2 targets. Warbreaker turns Colossus Smash into an AoE, and Cleave deals a little AoE damage, and if you hit at least 3 targets, it debuffs them all with deep wounds, making it do a lot of AoE damage. Cleave is definitely the best option for dealing sustained AoE damage, and Warbreaker seems like the go-to for burst AoE damage. Collateral Damage seems like it would really only be useful if you're fighting only 2 targets. Using Colossus Smash while Sweeping Strikes is active will put the debuff on both targets. This means that while Collateral Damage isn't a great talent, it has value in 2 target situations that Warbreaker and Cleave don't. The next to last tier looks very familiar, but it has a few important changes. First off, Avatar was just moved down here as part of this week's Big Arms changes, and it's still pretty competitive. It is on the global cooldown now, but it generates 20 rage to compensate, and it's just generally a decent offensive cooldown. It's not special, but it's not bad, and it lines up with Bladestorm's cooldown as well. In for the Kill works a lot like it does on Legion, which is unfortunately a huge nerf. A haste buff when you cast Colossus Smash makes your big offensive cooldown a little bit more cooldowny. Overall, it's not a great talent anymore, and it probably won't be very useful. Also in the tier is Deadly Calm. Deadly Calm is on the global cooldown, which is a mild annoyance, but it still works pretty well. Basically, when you use it, your next 4 abilities have no rage cost. All in all, Deadly Calm seems like it might be the better option for sustained DPS, and Avatar would be better for burst DPS. I suspect Avatar will be the more popular talent overall, and I've certainly enjoyed using it a lot more in leveling and playing around on the beta. And here we have the last tier. Anger Management works about the same as it has. Spending Rage reduces the cooldowns of Bladestorm and Colossus Smash, Warbreaker if you're talented into it. It's simple and it's excellent. A real winner for anything AoE related. Dreadnought adds a second charge to Overpower, and it makes it increase your Mortal Strike by 10% more damage per stack. This is a really good, fun talent, and in single target, it feels like the right way to play arms in BFA. The biggest problem I have with it is that it is right next to Anger Management. I really want to talent into both of them. I guess that's a good thing. And then we have Ravager. Ravager replaces Bladestorm on a shorter cooldown that doesn't really line up with anything. It applies deep wounds and generates rage every time it ticks, and just like Anger Management, it's an AoE DPS talent. Unfortunately, it seems to be the much weaker of the 2 options. Perhaps Blizzard will make some changes so that you won't have to sit on cooldowns to line them up when using Ravager, but until they do, I don't think it's going to be competitive at all. These are the 2 talent setups I think will be most popular for Arms Warriors. Overall, this is mostly a choice between AoE and single target. The level 75 tier is probably the hardest choice, and it's really just a matter of how long the AoE packs you're killing will be alive. If they're up for a long time, Cleave wins. If they die quickly, Warbreaker wins. Before I finish up, and this part of the video is extra special, super duper subject to change, I want to go over Azurite Traits. Arms Warrior has 6 of them, so let's dive in. First up is Crushing Assault. It seems like a good bonus and with a relatively high proc rate. It doesn't appear to play nicely with Fervor of Battle, and you probably won't love casting slams during Massacre's super long execute phase, even if they are free, so that's kind of a strike against it. It's not bad though. Executioner's Precision is exactly like the artifact trait. It creates a basic rotation during the execute phase and adds extra damage onto sudden death procs outside of the execute phase. This plays super well with Massacre, and it's simple but good. Lord of War adds some damage and rage generation onto Colossus Smash and Warbringer. If you're using Warbringer into Bladestorm, it's not going to have a huge effect, but Bladestorm's only up for every other Colossus Smash, so it's not a bad bonus. It helps you pump out as much damage as you possibly can during Colossus Smash, and I like the idea. Gathering Storm is similar to the Legion Legendary Arms Helm. It increases your move speed and the damage of Bladestorm or Ravager while it's active. Unlike the Legendary Helm, it only applies to Ravager or Bladestorm's damage, which really hurts a potential synergy for Ravager. Overall, it seems like a decent burst AoE DPS increase. Nothing super special, but definitely not a bad buff to Bladestorm. Seismic Wave makes casting overpowered do a little AoE line in front of you. It's weird and it doesn't have any synergies with any of your other abilities or traits. It's just kind of a lame choice. Last up is Test of Might, and it's pretty fascinating. When Colossus Smash ends, you gain strength based on how much rage you spent while it was active. This doesn't seem like it'll have any powerful synergies, and increasing your damage after an offensive cooldown has fallen off is a weird call. But overall, it doesn't seem bad, it's just kind of strange. The Azurite traits for Arms Warrior are, for the most part, pretty appealing. I'm glad to see that there aren't any of those lousy AoE only traits, and even some of the weaker options look like they could be good if they're tuned well. So now for the two most important questions. Is Arms Warrior still fun, and is it good? I kind of already answered this right at the beginning of the video, but yes, absolutely. One of the reasons I've kept playing Warrior for all the years I've been playing WoW is because they have two really interesting DPS specs that feel very different from each other. During times throughout WoW's history when I haven't liked either Arms or Fury, I've always found something I enjoyed about the other spec. While Arms and Fury have recently been given some overlapping talents like Massacre, they don't really play anything alike at all. Unlike most specs, Arms has managed to carry over a lot of its most interesting perks from Legion while still getting a redesign that makes it feel fresh and new, rather than just sort of stripped down and basic. I like BFA's version of Arms Warrior more than I did Legion's, and I think the future for DPS warriors of all specs looks extremely bright. Well, I think that about covers it. If you have any questions about Arms Warriors, ask away. You can also head over to Skyhold, the Warrior Discord, where you'll find some helpful discussions. I will be covering other beta updates and putting together more tank-related and not always so tank-related videos soon, so stay tuned for more great BFA beta content, and as always, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.